So the bread has now finished its bulk rise. It is supposed to be 20 to 30% bigger. And I now at this point dump it onto my counter. I have this lovely granite counter that works really well. And it pretty much just separates on its own. It will have stickiness, but it's manageable. So there's my finished dough. Now, at this point I don't use flour, I use gluten-free flour. I think it's mostly rice flour because if I add flour, wheat flour, I will be adding flour that has not fermented. And if somebody were to be gluten intolerant, that bread would no longer work for them. But, so the goal here is to cut this about in half. And I usually get a pretty close idea of it. And each half is now going to be shaped. So if it gets shaped with going in half, I usually have to use a little bit of flour here on my hands. And then I do one side over, the other side over, and then it goes in half with the seam side down. I'm just getting flour on my hands to help me manage the stickiness of the flour. And at this point I do circular motions, tucking in the bottom underneath itself and dragging it across the surface. This is to build tension with the glutens. I do a little circular motion, which sort of feels like it's winding it up. I tend to do this kind of I have a rhythm to it. Go through kind of 3 reps of that. And now it's going to rest for a half an hour on the by using just a mixing bowl, it's airtight so that it won't build a crust on it. Now I'll do the same with the other half. It goes first in half, sort of thirds. It's sort of a little unwieldy at this point, but I'm going to be repeating this a second time in a half an hour. I'll be doing exactly the same thing and putting it into the Banneton bowl, which is what we have here. These can be done by putting a cloth on a bowl. The cloth is very heavily floured so that it won't stick. And because the main goal is just a bowl where it can raise overnight in what's called the proofing stage. So this is shaping it. And you can see there's cheese sticking out on the surface, and there's some jalapeno peppers, and all of that's fine. It's good in the crust as well as in the insides. All right, so now this one gets put underneath a mixing bowl, and I set the timer for a half an hour. And that's it for that stage. In a half an hour, I'll repeat that and put them in the Banneton baskets. All right, so now it's been 24 hours since I began the bread. I have an oven that is preheated to 500 degrees. I have the bread in the Banneton basket that's been wrapped in a plastic bag, and you can see condensation on that bag. So this is the way I get it into the oven with the least problem, because I don't know any other way to do it. Now, I don't know if you remember, but I had said that we put it in the basket seam side up, and that side is now going to be on the bottom as I flip it over onto this parchment paper. This is the Banneton basket, and its only use is just to hold it while it raises in the fridge. Now I have a lame, I call them a LMA because lame is a lame name, but anyway, it's a razor blade on a stick. And the point of this is to make a cut in the bread, which will allow for an oven spring. And there's many ways to cut. People have their own secret ways, I guess, or their own signature way. This is the one I sort of tend to like to do the most. And I'll photograph this at the end so you see what the impact of this is. But it's going to allow for an abundant raise. It's called an oven spring. And I go through twice this big cut, about a ½ an inch down or more. And that is what is going to grow in a surprising way. The other thing I'll do is take the moisture from this bag and kind of, because what we want here is moisture. It's going to go into the iron pot with the lid, and that just added a little moisture to it. So I'm ready to go. I open the oven. There's my preheated pot. Carry this over very carefully, drop it in, and cover it with the lid. Be very careful. It's a hot pot, a hot oven. I have burned myself a few times. And that will now go for 25 minutes, after which I'll take the lid off for another 30 minutes. I also reset the bake temperature. Reset it to I do it to 480. It's supposed to be 475, but the oven never gets quite that hot. And start that. So in 25 minutes, I take the lid off, and then 30 minutes later, and it's done.